All right, here we are. We will give everyone a moment to spool on in, but as always, welcome back, Dr. Grayson. Good to be here with you once
John,
again.
John. Yeah, but
Oh, is your name John? Is that your name? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know who Dr. Grayson is. Only
I have no idea. Yeah. John, always good to be here. And yeah, sorry, I was traveling last week, so it got a little mixed up for our time, but we were able to move it to today, so it
here we are.
worked out just wonderfully. So, um, and we're going to get to see each other soon at the OCD conference. Which, by the way, so you are aware, John, there is an opportunity and a chance that I may murder you at the conference. Just so you know, it
Okay.
could happen.
Is there? I mean, I'm aware of. I always think that anything could happen at
Anything
any
could.
time.
Uh,
I mean, like I could kill you, but it hadn't
you could.
occurred to me that my killing you was needed to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Not that I was, yeah, because I think if I do it, I'd rather catch you off guard. But what
Yeah. Right.
gives you the urge to kill me?
The urge to kill you actually will be revealed throughout the course. I was
Oh,
reading
okay,
ahead on some of the questions here, so
okay.
I just wanted to throw out a potentially negative thought into the universe, and I'm not going to undo it. I'm going to have a sit with that, and you'll see why that is
Okay.
later on as we go through some of our
And
questions.
and and I'll make this clear later, but actually, something we were discussing prior to the show having nothing to do with killing me
Yes, correct.
is quite pertinent to this.
Yes, yes, it is actually.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel accidentally I am protected by wards.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Well, let's see if they stop me from killing you then when I see you at the conference.
Or will it keep me killed if you kill me?
That could be too. One never
Yeah.
knows. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many ways to take that. You would
Yes.
never know. But let's get into some Q&A here and let's see what we've got. Um, I did read through a few already before you came on, and tonight seems to be the record for some of the longest questions we've ever been given. So we're going long form tonight. Some of them I won't be able to read the entire thing, but I can summarize as I've read through several of them. But
I see some that I am eager to answer, but
oh well, do
I
you
don't
want to
know.
jump to one? Go right ahead. I usually start. So why
Really?
don't you start today? Yes, yes, please, please.
Really?
We're just gonna mix it up today. So go ahead. What do you
This
want to?
is not this isn't exactly a short answer, and it's not. I think it's a really great question because
Okay.
somebody Sunshine wrote,
All
"How
right.
do you practice acceptance with the POCD theme?"
Oh well, that is right up your alley then. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you know you have to remember that acceptance, as I think we've mentioned before together,
Yeah.
acceptance. Everybody talks about it, it's like a wonderful thing, but acceptance actually sucks
Yeah.
because acceptance means I'm going to live the second best life. So, what I generally ask somebody with POCD is, well, what if you woke up tomorrow and you knew that diddling a small child, I mean, it just is incredibly, like, you have no doubt, there's no like, what if, that is incredibly arousing. What do you do? And then the first thing we have to tell people is, oh, yeah, sorry, you can't kill yourself. In this scenario, you're condemned to life. So now what do you do? And people kind of, you know, get all upset, of course. And one question I'll ask is, so currently, if you see an adult who's an appropriate, object for your affection or whatever, if you think they're really hot, do you run up to them and ask, can you sleep with them? And they usually say no. So it's like, oh, wait. So you can be attracted to somebody and not run after them because people with the POCD almost make it seem like, well, if I have that, I automatically will do it. And it's like, well, that is, I mean, that is a possibility. But let's start
Mm-hmm.
with the other one, because
Mm-hmm.
currently you're kind of telling me, even if you found them attractive, like you might not do it, and we already know you have that ability since you are presumably not incredibly promiscuous, just going to bed with everybody that you can. I mean, if you are going to bed with everybody you can, that's a different situation for this scenario, but I'm going to assume that. And then people will come up with, but I'd be a terrible person. And I ask, well, there may be somebody out there, a bunch of people who have pedophile desires and choose to never give in because they know it would be wrong.
Correct.
So, and we don't know about them because they aren't, they don't talk about it. So are they all bad people? Because they're doing something very hard. It's not like they asked to be a pedophile.
Right.
Some people
Or
kind
to be
of back down on that. And then some people, it's like, well, some people still think they're evil. It's like, well, what if it's your brother or sister? Like, what if they come to you and tell you this? Are they bad, and should they have horrible things happen because they have these desires? And then usually people will go like, I guess not, because they generally don't want a damn family. So I don't know if Sunshine falls in the normal class of like, okay, so I guess the most likely outcome would be like, so you'd have these desires and thoughts, and you would have no doubt, and you would try to live an honest life, not doing those things. And yes, it would be icky having those, but it doesn't mean you couldn't get married. It doesn't even mean you couldn't have children. And if the answer to the question of like, well, what if I actually did it? Okay, well, that's, presumably you're really, would you let yourself get caught or not? And you'll get caught, and we'll have to talk about how you'll have how you'll try to get a lot of treatment. Because I think also for this person, if you actually were definitely a pedophile, I have a suspicion you would want some help in being able to control yourself. So it's not preferable.
Yeah.
But I don't want my son or grandson to die. It's not preferable for me to have to live with their deaths, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. I mean, and so acceptance isn't, acceptance is like, as always in any situation, no matter how often, it's like, how will I try to make the best life I can under that situation? So I hope that gives Sunshine some ideas.
I've used the example of, what if I didn't accept that Susan had cancer? So
Right.
she had it for, 5 years. What if I never accepted that she had it? And I just said to her every time, quit your bitching and moaning. Stop being in pain. You're pulling my leg. This crap you're faking, it's bullshit. And then she died. I'd be like, well, how the hell did she die? I don't understand. She didn't have cancer. I don't accept that. I mean,
right.
I didn't like that she had cancer. I accepted that she had cancer, and we made the best of whatever we could with it. But it's not like in accepting the diagnosis that I was like, oh, woohoo, yay!
Yeah.
All right. yeah, that never happened. Mark said, Dr. McGrath, I heard about your train story with the person that has OCD, and my question is, how did you trust that person with your life? So, for those of you who don't know it, I was working with somebody who had intrusive thoughts of what if they would push people into a train. So our final ERP was to go to a train station. I stood a foot from the tracks, spread my legs as wide as I could to have the least amount of balance possible, and then put my arms behind my back, put her hands on my shoulders from behind me, and told her to push me into every train that came by for 3 hours. And at the end of the 3 hours, I turned around and said, what are you going to do tomorrow? She said, I'm going to enroll back in college. So how did I trust that person with my life? Very simply, because I'd have been more afraid of John standing behind me, who doesn't have OCD, who after 2 hours might have been like, I'm really sick of this. Just die by this train, you fool, and pushed me, versus anyone with OCD who would have made sure they would have done everything to prevent that from happening. So I had absolutely zero fear whatsoever. And that's why, Mark, I could trust that person with my life in that situation, because I was afraid of absolutely nothing happening whatsoever.
And having zero fear doesn't necessarily mean you were safe.
Right. Exactly.
But I think the other thing for him is everything is a matter of the odds. So she could have lost control and pushed you. You were playing the odds, and
she could have sneezed, right?
most, the odds are the odds. Like most of the time they work. Sometimes they don't, and it can be disaster. But we don't have a choice. There's no way to not play the odds. Because if you had to avoid her pushing you in the train, well, realistically, the odds of you dying in a car crash are greater. Lifetime incidence 1 in 107. So if you have to avoid her, you can never drive again. Like, if I have to avoid low probability events, what else do I have to avoid? Basically you have to decide, I'm going to live with risk or I'm going to have to live much crazier.
Right. Yeah. So for me, it wasn't I have to think about this now. It was just, oh, what's the next ERP? Oh, okay, I stand by a train and tell you to push me. Cool, let's go do it. And
Mm-hmm.
and that's all that it was. Do you want to take one, John? Feel free. One.
I'm leaving you in control, but okay.
Oh, okay, I can.
Here's one that's partially. It's a quickie.
Okay.
Can explain the difference between OCD and psychosis.
Oh, well,
this is a general answer, but I'm dead serious. In psychosis, you see the three-headed dog coming out of the wall, talking to you, and you have no doubt that the three-headed dog is there. OCD, you're arguing back and forth. Now that's like every definition, that is not there would be times we could kind of come up with exceptions, but that would be the general rule. That it's something that everybody else agrees is not like within the normal experience, and you're absolutely sure. And the three-headed dog, you're seeing it, hearing it, and all that, and of course, because you see it and hear it, you don't think you're crazy.
Right. Marie says, I've had OCD and ADHD formally diagnosed as an adult. I've dealt with it until COVID, but now I can't sleep until 3 a.m. or later because of organization. I still have a mess. I'm constantly feeling horrible. I take meds to calm the intrusive thoughts, but I'm still beating myself up mentally all the time. Nothing seems to work. What's the best therapy and medication for this? It doesn't sound like ERP has been tried yet in how I'm reading that answer. And I would always say that's your first line of defense against the dark arts of obsessive compulsive disorder. You want to utilize some ERP work and teach yourself how to be able to live with doubt and uncertainty and handle the intrusive thoughts and images and urges without giving into compulsions and doing what the OCD wants, because we want you living the life that you want to live and not the life that your OCD wants you to live. And therefore, in your all your organizing, it sounds like you're doing to 3 a.m, is not in service of yourself, but in service of something your OCD is driving you to do. And I would work with a therapist who can help you overcome that so that you don't have to feed into the OCD.
I'm just going to add, I agree.
All right. Janice, or did you have one, John? Go ahead.
Go to Janice.
Okay. Janice said, my OCD is back so hard and I was diagnosed with hyperthyroidism. I have adrenaline surges and it's that brings doubt and fear. I feel lousy after months of therapy and seeing an endocrinologist. I think that you always have to do some work on panic issues when you see this. I've worked with enough people who have had thyroidism or thyroid issues going on and adrenaline surges. And very often there's a panic experience that goes along with that. And there's a great treatment for panic concerns called interoceptive exposures, where you teach yourself how to handle all of the various bodily sensations that you might be experiencing. There's a chance you're experiencing those, and every time you do, it's almost a shock and awe kind of experience. And you react to it as something bad might actually be happening this time. And by doing interoceptive work, you can teach yourself not to respond to those types of bodily rushes and sensations anymore in a way that's full of doubt and fear and insecurity, but be able to be like, oh yeah, I've made this symptom happen so many times now, I've learned that I can handle it. Nothing to be afraid of in this situation.
Marie Robert writes that she takes meds that calm the intrusive thoughts, but is still beating herself up mentally all the time. Nothing seems to work. What's the best therapy and medications for this? And I should preface that, even though I'm going to answer this question or attempt to, it's a really complicated question in one part where I feel like I would really need to know you way better, Marie. But so I'm just going to make some guesses that if I'm way off, sorry that I won't be answering your question. But to say that you're beating yourself up makes me suspect that you probably have a pretty crappy self-esteem. I mean, I suspect you might be the kind of person where if I give you a compliment, you figure either I don't know you or I'm just being nice to you. And if I say something not nice to you, you're going to take it partially seriously, which means that if you think about it, there's no way for anybody outside to make you feel better. You've heard of rose-colored glasses, and it's where you see everything rosy. You wear the crap-covered glasses, that no matter what it is, you see it crappily. But so that there's it seems like an aspect, and this may be directly related to your OCD or something that your OCD takes advantage of. Um, you're constantly beating yourself up, and so you lack self-compassion, and you don't realize that that's actually one of your symptoms. I mean, if your self-esteem is bad, the way I'm saying, so that you're always beating yourself up, that is actually a worse symptom than your OCD. Because no matter how much OCD is screwing you up, you think that that's crazy. This crappy self-esteem stuff, this way you view yourself, you actually believe that. I mean, if you come to therapy with Patrick or me, our idea is you have a messed up way of looking at yourself. We're going to help you look at yourself more accurately. Whereas it's almost you're like, well, let's turn you into a good human being so you don't have to hate yourself. So learning self-compassion is hard because you probably have a very long time of practicing this, and you have probably a distorted view of yourself. I'm going to partially take the easy way out and suggest Kimberly Quinlan's book, The Self-Help, Self, the Guide to Self-Compassion for OCD. I'm blocking on the title exactly.
It's all the exclamation points. That's why, because you.
Well, yes. He does too many explanations. But however, I usually hate books about self-compassion because they basically almost say like, oh, feel good and be nice to yourself and all kinds of things like, well, I don't know how to do that. I feel Kimberly actually gives realistic advice that's not like all unicorns and flowers, and it would be a beginning. Medication wise, it's like, what's the better medication without knowing you? I mean, generally we're going to guess on an SSRI, but an SSRI might help with your depression. It might take the edge off. If you have a lifetime of really dumping on yourself, that's a lot of bad habits that we'd have to help you with. Um, and one would hope that the therapist you're seeing, you'd be telling them about this and your OCD, because it is something that's in some ways a little simpler to work on because it's less specialized therapy than OCD therapy.
One of the things I say too with self-compassion is the goal doesn't always have to be that you like yourself. I'm happy when people are neutral about themselves, even
Mm-hmm.
if that's still better than crapping all over yourself all the time.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
There's a very long one from Jay Javert. I will not read the entire thing because even he laughed at how long it was. But basically what it was is there was an injury at work and he had an intrusive thought about testing to see if it hurt. But if that caused it to hurt more, did that mean that he was making it hurt more? And then he would have to lie to the people who were calling from workman's comp about has he done anything that's caused any more pain, because he was checking to see it hurt, but did he check it because he wanted it to hurt more? I think you can see where I'm going, John, with where he's going at that. And now there's, of course, the urge to call them back and to let them know that he's done this, just to confess. Otherwise, he read that if you commit fraud on an injury claim, then you could be sued, and he doesn't want to be accused of fraud. So
be accused. First of all, Patrick and I, and I'm guessing because I don't read Patrick's mind, we're both going to recommend risk being accused of fraud and do not call them back.
Right.
Because
that's number one. Mm-hmm.
Because one of two things is happening. High probability this is your OCD. You apparently have scrupulosity and want to be absolutely honest. We would like you to lie as much as everyone else. But so if it's OCD, your confession would actually be a lie. But they won't know that, and you would lose your disability. So, we have to guess, is he secretly unconsciously lying and doing that to get this, or is this his OCD? And we are betting on your OCD, and you don't get to actually know for sure. And remember, because the goal of treatment is learning to live with uncertainty. So the goal is, I don't get to be 100% honest. I'm making a guess here, and there's no pure guesses. Since the answer we're giving is simple, if you want to tell me this sounds really hard and anxiety provoking, you are right. Getting better is anxiety provoking. So is staying sick. And
Yeah.
so I am asking you to do something very hard. But if you're going to suffer, I'd rather have you suffer getting better. And do you have anything to add to that? I think I don't.
Well, there's no amount of telling people what you've done that is going to give you an answer that your OCD is going to accept is the right answer, right? No one with OCD has ever been given an answer and their OCD has said, "Congratulations, you've uncovered the exactly correct answer. Thank you so much. I will now be leaving you because you have finally fulfilled all of my needs by giving me everything that I want." That has never happened. So all this does is leads you down the wormhole of more and more questions and more research and more doubt and insecurity and more desire for reassurance. And it's often in doing that, that's where people get in trouble. It's the safety behaviors that cause problems in people's lives. And that's why they stay so stuck.
And if possible, I would also have the person work on not checking, because I suspect that that's also an obsession. Do I still
Yes.
hurt? Is it getting better? And it's going to take however long it's going to take, and the checking doesn't speed it up. It may or may not hurt, but and that's kind of harder one to not do, because that's so easy to give it and check, as opposed to what you're going to tell the disability person. But
Sure.
it'd be useful to, like, it's probably not, it'll be
Even
more obvious when it's better.
Yeah, even those of us who don't have OCD, if we've heard something, we'll check it once in a while to see how's that feeling. Oh yeah, it still hurts, right? I mean, so I've always been fascinated how OCD takes a quote unquote normal or regular behavior that everybody else does all the time, and now starts to put nefarious reasonings behind why it's being done. Yeah. No, OCD has never accused anyone of doing something for wonderfully great reasons, right? Yeah. Let's see. Peter says, some time ago, my friend started bullying me. It was when he would say things, his friends would immediately make fun of him. And this happened quite a bit. It caused him to start being really quiet around them and starting to get anxious. Then it's got to where he started to develop a Googling compulsion of how to get rid of anxiety. Since then, he feels he's gotten worse and he's struggling a lot. Any tips on getting your confidence back? Well, speaking in front of your friends, number one, and whether or not they tease you or make fun of you, sticking to your guns on your statement and not backing down. I mean, some people sometimes enjoy the fact that the weak person that they perceive to be weak will say something, and then they can shut them down or make fun of them, and that person will kind of crawl away. So you have to practice standing your ground and being able to take what they do. And I would bet after a while of not, skirting away from it anymore, they would probably move on to something else. But what do we unfortunately know about bullies? Once they find the weak spot, they're pretty relentless on it and will keep at it for a long time.
Another thing, and it depends on the kind of bullying, whether what I'm about to say would work. I mean, you are going to feel anxious. Like, the goal
Sure.
really needs to not be getting rid of anxiety. The initial goal needs to be acting confident. And that's our initial goal, having you act confident and not avoid, and that allows you to live life, and then we can work on anxiety later. But one of the things, depending on the kind of bullying they're saying, one suspects that you're defending yourself or you're getting tongue-tied, and you need to practice this out loud at home to pull it off. So if they're going to say something and you're just kind of going like, so, just like that, because if you defend yourself, that's fun. Then I can attack you more. Or if or if you show some reaction. But if you just say so, it's like, oh my God, you're blushing now. It's like, so. And if you can practice that, it gives them less to bully. Now, I said it depends on what kind of things are being said to you, but rather than defending yourself, if they're it sounds like
Yeah.
they're insulting you or whatever. It's like, all right, whatever. And it doesn't matter. Remember, in this case, it matters how you sound. So you need to be at home and say it in front of a mirror until it sounds right. The first time you can't do this can't be with them. It has to. You have to practice this acting experience.
Right. I remember one time, it was one of my first social anxiety ERPs on postdoc. We had someone who came in who was the youngest of five boys and was teased relentlessly by his older brothers. And we stood around the tape recorder with the actual cassette loop tape, if you remember those good old days, and recorded everything that his brothers said to him and had him listen to it for hours. And after 2 hours, he was in pretty rough shape. He was feeling pretty bad about it. By hour 3, he was pretty neutral. By hour 4, he was begging, "Can I stop this? Because this is stupid." I said, "Great. I'm glad you think it's stupid. Do one more hour." And by hour 5, he said, "I can't believe that these words have ruled my life for the last 15 years. They're just stupid and idiotic, and I just don't give a crap anymore." Like, great. There we go. Look at that. We removed the power of words.
I love AA's question.
Okay. Oh, take it. Yes.
They're asking, what is SOOCD, sexual orientation OCD, and how do they know if they're suffering from that or if they're in denial? Now, the first thing to say is you could have SOOCD and have trouble with your sexual orientation because you're making it's like it's one or the other. In which case, you now start obsessing: do I have OCD or not? Um, but I can have OCD and still have sexual orientation issues.
Sure.
So the goal with regard, and so as soon as you say you want to know, we definitely know there's an OC part. So you're leaving me with little doubt that you have OCD. As to the
Yeah.
nature of what your actual sexual orientation is, um, we only kind of know one thing, which is, do you have a current plan to try out one of the orientations that you think you don't want to do, but you're worried you might want to do? That's it. Like, it doesn't tell, like, it doesn't say to me, oh, are you gay? Or, if you're afraid of being gay, because all the tests you do to figure out if you're gay won't work. Even if you look for the people like worry about like, what if I get some kind of genital response? But the bottom line is, if you think about your genitals, you will have a response. I mean, a really terrible thing that happens to rape victims is many of them will lubricate, some will have an orgasm, and it's not because they enjoyed it. It's the body just does that, and it's a nightmare for them. And so there's actually the only thing you get to know is like, at this moment, I'm not planning to engage in that. I might be that tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and I will have no doubt. But as long as you're testing, as long as it's like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm not ready to date whatever it is you're afraid to date.
Yeah.
So we're not asking you to know. Living with OCD is living with uncertainty. Things can change in unexpected ways. So I'm going to tell you, like most people who come to us with this end up sticking with a particular orientation. But I just, there are two tales that where that didn't happen. I had a guy come to me. He was worried that he was gay, and a previous therapist had encouraged him to have a gay encounter, which he did and disliked. And the goal of treatment was teaching him to live with not really knowing and just, he was going to choose to date women. And he did that. And he was happy with treatment. I ran into him about 6 years later and he said, "You'll never guess, I've decided I'm gay." Another one who did not have any sexual orientation problems, my niece, God, my niece will kill me. Anyway, dating a woman from college till around the age of 34. They were living together. In the course of 1 week, her lover found a guy and went straight. Like, who would predict? And this is somebody who wasn't having any doubts. So I think tomorrow, I don't think I'm going to dump my wife and go with guys, but I only know that I don't plan on it right now. And I could decide that I really like guys better, but I've been with my wife for 50 years, so I'm there's a lot I want to stay there, so I'll settle for second best. I mean, currently it's first best, but if I wake up tomorrow, it'll be second best.
I would have sent Kathy a plaque. Sometimes you're second best.
Yes. That should have an interesting effect. But that's what I'm saying. So we only know what you have a current conscious plan for, and even if you found like if you had no doubt that you found the opposite, well, whatever it is, whatever orientation you're wondering, you found the other orientation sexually exciting. A lot of people have fantasies about something they'd never want to do, so that doesn't prove anything either. So all we get to know is what is your plan, and even if you decide you find it exciting, you could still say, well, but I'd rather live this lifestyle. So the goal is not to know, but knowing whether it's. I mean, you have OCD. That's the good news in terms of that. But does that tell us your actual orientation? No, it doesn't. We don't get to know anything. We just know what you're not planning on doing now.
And again, this does not discriminate on orientations. It is a doubt of whatever it is. So
well, that's the kind of nice thing about the story with my niece's lover, right? I mean, she was a lesbian who suddenly went straight.
Yeah, exactly. So OCD doesn't care what your orientation is. It just loves to give you doubt about it. That's what it likes.
Whatever you think you don't want. But I said it's you don't get to know.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm. We're at our halfway point. Always good to remind people that this webinar brought to you weekly by NoCD. NoCD is an online platform for the treatment of obsessive compulsive disorder. And there we treat things like OCD and hoarding and BFRBs and tics. And we have insurance coverage throughout the entire United States. And we also work in Canada, the UK, and Australia. And we do exposure and response prevention and habit reversal training. We even do our NoCD 411 sessions as well, too, which are sessions for people if they're not maybe quite ready for prime time therapy but want to ask some questions. We're there for you as well, too. So, and once a month, we have this great guy, John Grayson, with us here. So, John, it's always a pleasure this shared Wednesday together that we get to do this. Funny story for everyone. The first time we did this, and afterwards, John and I were talking, and we said how much fun it was. And John said, well, yeah, if you ever want to do it again. I said, I do want to do it again. He said, well, maybe you'll ask me. And I said, I will ask you. And then 2 weeks later, I called him. He said, oh my God, you actually did ask me. What do you know? And so here we are. and now it's a standard. It's just what we do. So it's awesome. Mm-hmm. B had some things just about, some things similar to POCD, what we said, but I like the last part. I don't want to ask if OCD can do this because I'm sure the answer is always yes. Yes, it is, right? But is this common? And yeah, it is. It's anything in OCD can be common because instead of thinking in common, can OCD do this specific thing? Look at all these things as typical themes of what OCD can do. And all those themes revert back to very basic things, causing doubt and uncertainty, right? And what if kinds of questions. And OCD lives in the doubts, lives in the certainties, and loves the what ifs. And so, yes, that's what OCD can do. And it can exploit those things to the nth degree. Absolutely.
I see two here that I really like.
Take it.
Yeah. So let me start with Sunshine Bird. She has a hard time with thought replacing. She has mainly false memory that are instant, and when she gets a scary, intrusive thought, she will rewash and with a positive thought. And her therapist had asked,
that's the one. That's why I started the show off with "I might murder you" at the conference, and I'm not replacing that with a good thought. I'm just leaving that one be there. By the way, so
and I'm confident, not that Patrick won't kill me. I'm confident because I just had a phoenix tattooed on the arm, and everybody knows that you may not know, a phoenix, when it dies, burns up and revives itself out of its ashes. So I feel if Patrick kills me, I will be revived by this tattoo.
We can't get rid of you.
Thank God it's not. Yeah. It's not magical thinking or anything. This is true. This is true. Going back to that question about OCD versus psychosis. We know where I stand. And Patrick brings up, one of the things that to say not listen to the thought. One of the rules in developing exposures I mean, because response prevention is important, but exposure, kind of the rule is it needs to be something in general that a dead person can't do. Dead people great at not washing their hands. They're really terrible at making their hands dirty and spreading. I won't treat dead people because they basically refuse to do exposure, despite their expertise in response prevention. So to say not to listen and continue with the task at hand, it is definitely critical for your recovery for you to not rewash your hair, even though it's scary. Now, I'm not sure exactly what whether you're trying to get rid of anxiety or you don't like the thought, but Patrick, as often is true, is exactly right. The thing to do is, okay, maybe, like maybe this false memory is true. And because it's in the past, I'm going to have to keep living and not do anything about it. Like the odd, because remember, everything in life is the odd. So it's probably not true, but it might be. And so, like, what if it's actually true? What are you going to do? And I would suggest not confessing it because, if it's something really terrible, I think you might as well learn to recover from this. But so, how would I try to live in a positive way, even if it's true? And the main thing I'm trying to do is like live with it without knowing. You get to say to yourself, I think it's my OCD, but it might not be. Which brings me, if I can, Patrick, right back to Stephanie above, who my real event OCD latches on the past thoughts I've had in a relationship and wants me to confess these thoughts that I've had to my partner. And it's forcing me to feel guilt.
Forcing.
Yeah. But you know what's interesting about guilt? I mean, it is true for all of us, not people with OCD. Logic does not change feelings.
No.
Period. If I hook you up to a shock electrode, because psychologists like doing that, ring a bell and shock you, and I keep doing that, eventually you're going to jump when I ring the bell. Yep. I pull that electrode off, and logic says you're not going to have a shock. And you know that. And I ring the bell and you jump. There's nothing you can do about that. Yep. Logic can tell you that if we keep ringing the bell, eventually you'll stop responding. Yep. So you have these guilt feelings. And the only thing you get to say is, because first of all, confessing either is going to drive your lover crazy, because it's like, okay, fine, shut up, or they're going to be upset by them, and you're upsetting them over something that we're suggesting I'd have you not know you perfectly, because you're really not confessing out of love, you're confessing out of fear. So the question is, you get to pick: is love or fear going to be more important in your relationship? And I am hoping you pick love. And in terms of the guilt, it's like you get to say, I hope this guilt is OCD, and I'm going to act like it is, and I hope I'm right. But yes, you're going to feel the guilt. I mean, it's just like most of us, if we walk by somebody homeless and we don't give them money every time, it's like, we try to make up all these excuses, like, well, I can't give to every homeless person every night. And we feel guilty. The bottom line is like, okay, I'm not a saint.
Yeah.
None of us are saints. Everyone listening to this has decided to allow children to die.
Correct.
Because everyone here has bought nice things for themselves rather than giving that money to charity to save starving children somewhere. That's like normal. And it would actually not be useful to do that, because then how much money would you give away? And I could go into an entire riff of how far we could go with that. But we are imperfect beings. And so with the guilt you're feeling, okay, the best you get to say, I hope it's OCD. If all this stuff is true, then okay, I'm not perfect, and I will accept that. But I'm going to risk doing this exposure because, I'm hoping that this is more an act of love than fear to resist it. And yeah, you'll feel guilty for a while. That's okay. It's funny. We're more comfortable confronting fear than guilt. I know it's like this. I'll shut up in a second.
No.
This will make you go. Everybody knows they're not perfect, and everyone hates examples of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So okay, Anyway,
there's almost a notion, John. I'd love your opinion on this. That I'm only supposed to have good emotions, and I'm supposed to have them 100%. So how can I truly love someone if I have doubt? And I mean, I know you've been married to Kathy for 50 years, and I'm going to bet there's still things, even maybe on a daily basis, that she does, and you're like, God damn it, Kathy, why?
By the way, just to make up for the earlier things I said, no, Kathy is perfect. However, I am sure that she has a lot to put up with
Yeah,
me. And I
yeah.
feel like when I say I'm sure she has a lot to put up with me, you're not going to argue.
No, I'm not going to argue that at all.
Yeah.
No.
So she is settling for second best, clearly. Right. There is no perfection, right. The idea that every moment is like, Kathy and I went to France a couple of years ago. And when you say, and we went to Paris, and you say you go to Paris, everybody's eyes get
The
glossy.
city of love.
And every morning we'd get and it was a great vacation. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And every morning we'd get up and you go to a patisserie and we'd have a croissant and coffee and it was great. It is just a piece of pastry. And we went to this one place where they had incredible latte coffee, but we only went there 2 days. And the rest of the time we went someplace else and it was like, okay. And it was still a great vacation. And one day we went to the catacombs, which is kind of weird. The bones of 6 million people piled up in little neat stacks all over the place. And we had to wait in the hot sun for 3 hours, but this was a great vacation. We did one bus trip, we were 6 hours in a bus to see some site. And we went to one really fancy restaurant that, it's not like we're gourmands where we love everything. So you go to a really great restaurant, doesn't mean like the food's going to be great for your taste, but it was a great vacation. And the point is, a great vacation is not great every moment.
No.
It was a great vacation, and we loved it, and we really enjoyed the way we did it. But there are these other moments, and so yes, I think when you are with somebody who you think you love, and that's the way I said think you love, you're never getting 100% of what you want. Yeah, 70% more or less. If you're getting 20%, okay, maybe get out of there because your relationship is more fantasy than real. But you're getting 70%, and there's always something you're not getting, and there's more to it than being pleased at every possible second and having a life of orgasmic wonder every moment.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you're not having those moments of wonder, then of course that's what OCD loves to grab onto and say, "See, I told you. Look at this.
Right.
Maybe this should be better. Maybe this could be better."
Right. And then you do the relationship thermometer. How am I feeling now? How am I feeling now? And of course, when you're doing that, you're not feeling, and so now you're distant, and you're not actually feeling whatever you might be feeling.
Yeah. Darla has the best question of the night. Darla Floyd. It says, "John, what is your secret for your youthful looks?"
Well, I think there's a few possible answers. Long ago, I was really, really careful in choosing my parents' genes, which ones I would have. So I think I did a really good job in gene selection for my genome. I'm really working this in. This will be the second time tonight I can get this because as Patrick knows, because I'm telling him I just got this tattoo of a phoenix on my arm the other day, and so I keep being reborn. So obviously,
that's it.
Doing things anew,
yes,
and getting reborn. Because generally it's my first tattoo at age 71. So, so I think that's part of the secret.
John, you might want to look at 736. There's a question of yours who says they're an old patient of yours who is saying hello. So you might want to just skip to that one and take a look and see.
736. Mm-hmm. Oh, I'll bet they're 536 for me.
Oh, yes, 536 for your time. Yes, 536 for your time. Mm-hmm.
So. Oh. Oh, okay. I want to find it.
There you go. Let's see.
Hi, Jen.
Someone said, "Can you do treatment for suicide OCD and not be depressed?" Absolutely. You don't have to have depression to have fears that you might kill yourself and intrusive thoughts about what if you were to do so. Depression is not a prerequisite for having that kind of intrusive thought whatsoever. You could be a very happy-go-lucky, jolly person who thinks, "What if I was so happy today, then my day got ruined by thinking I might want to harm myself," and then compulsions following to make sure that you don't, and everything. So there's no requisite of depression whatsoever in a suicidal themed OCD.
Okay, I have to answer Phoenix
Very good, because of
because
your tattoo,
I
of
got the
course. Yes,
tattoo,
please.
and she's,
Yes,
this is obviously fate.
yes.
I was wondering, can OCD change how you perceive the present moment? I keep wondering if I did something on purpose, but they're not just thoughts because they are movements, which is leaving me a little mystified. Phoenix is exactly what you mean, although I'm guessing. Um, Everything we do changes how we perceive the present moment. And if
Absolutely.
I want to perceive the present moment properly, then it won't happen. I mean, mind you, I'm not sure what properly is, but um, the goal is the goal. This is way easier said than done. Is um, to be focusing on to be giving more attention to what I prefer to be attending to. It doesn't mean I'm not attending to the other stuff. I'm just not. I'm practicing not wishing the other stuff away. Um, and you're suggesting that you have a whole bunch of movements that you're noticing, and so the question that I'm having is, are these movement tics, or are they voluntary because they serve some other function? If they're voluntary, I would be talking with you about making wrong movements, not necessarily no movements, but wrong move. Because if these are stereotypical in some way that they're doing something, how can we make them wrong? Or there are a couple of other things we could do if we could have you tense and just to not make the movement so you're doing something else. If they are ticks, then it's going to be learning how to live with ticky movements, as opposed to keep wishing, like, I wish they would stop, I wish they would stop. I had a friend who he was a little Tourettic, and he would do constant throat clearing.
Hmm.
And he was so great because he actually didn't care. He never said anything about it. He never apologized. He just, which made sense. And he was really he was a model. I don't know if I can handle anything that comes my way, but I do know that there are always somebody who's handled something in a really heroic way, and they let me know it's possible, and I always hope I could be
Yeah.
like them. So if these aren't really ticky moments, the goal is going to be learning to be focusing on ticks and the present, and the idea that I have to perceive the present moment in a certain way. Well, there is no way I actually have to perceive the present moment. I mean, all of us perceive the different moment in multiple different ways. um, and if I don't have OCD, I don't notice which way I'm focusing it on it right now, whether I'm really kind of watching and not in the present, or I'm in it, or I'm completely gone because I'm fantasizing something else.
I want to share a fascinating story with you. That's kind of your story of your friend with the throat clearing reminded me of. I worked with someone once who came to the US from Africa to be a teacher's assistant at a university and had a stuttering problem and was referred to me for the stuttering.
Mm.
And it was fascinating because he came in my office and he told me he never knew he stuttered until he came to the United States. Because in Africa, people would just wait for
Mm.
him to get out what he needed to say, and then they would reply, and then they would wait again for him to get out what he would say. And no one ever told him he stuttered. And then he came to
Wow.
the US, and all the students were like, I can't have this as my TA. This, I want faster. I need, this, I got to use my time, if, all this kind of stuff. And he said he was floored to learn that he stuttered. And he was in his 20s before he realized it. So I just thought that was amazing.
Yes.
I want to read Jenny's question or statement here, and there's a very purposeful. I'm going to read it word for word and tell you why I'm going to read it. I have really bad harm OCD. I get thoughts that I will harm my boyfriend or dog. I have very, very bad anxiety and get thoughts that I harm them, and then the thoughts will stop. I would never act on them. One of the things that I've been doing recently is when a patient is in, or a member's in my session, and they're telling me about how really, really bad their thoughts are, I stop them and I say, I will no longer accept any qualifiers on your thoughts or images or urges whatsoever. I will not listen to how very, very bad they are or awful or horrible they are. I will only hear from you that you have intrusive thoughts, images, or urges, and that's all that we're going to go to. Because I'm going to bet if you're telling me that, you're telling yourself that all day long. And all that is doing is reinforcing for you how many times you do that. And I had a patient I said, grab a Post it, and I want you to tally how many times a day you've told yourself this. And at the 87th time, she stopped making a tick mark on there. And we have messaging at NoCD, and she messaged me at the end of the day. I had no idea that I was doing this to myself all day long, that all I was doing was telling myself all day long how bad I was and how screwed I was. And just that revelation for her was amazing, to catch herself on that, because she realized how down and depressed she was by constantly reminding herself of this fact all day.
And I would only say this one thing that you're going to hate me for because you're going to agree. I think.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because generally, I would say to somebody, there's no such thing as an intrusive thought.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
all thoughts, no matter how violent or normal, and I like to. I mean,
Right.
there's probably a more present TV show I could use, but I like to go to the HBO show True Blood, where they had good
Oh,
vampires and
it
bad
was a great
vampires,
show.
and every time the heroine would have sex with the good vampire, and it was always explicit because it was HBO. So part of the lovemaking was he'd always chomp down on her neck and blood would come pouring out. Except this was a good thing in that show.
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling me you have weird thoughts.
Yeah.
Like this is like normal people loving that. And and then think of how many crime shows there are and all those things. And the difference between this person and somebody who's writing a crime show is like somebody's getting rich and you're
Yes.
getting anxious. So the fact you
Yes.
think about the people you love doesn't mean anything to us. It's like, okay,
Right.
if you tell me that you have no doubt, so can't, and because as soon as I say this, you're going to think like maybe I am thinking that, but this has to be no doubt. This has to be as much as you think you're sitting in a chair right now. And you tell me like the idea of like taking a knife and stabbing the person through the neck and watching the blood pour out and watch the fear in their eyes. And like, oh my God, yeah, that absolutely is the best, no question. Then I'd like you to call someone.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're like concerned, is my bad? Am I going to do it? We're going to hope it's OCD.
Mm-hmm.
And they're normal thoughts. And why do you have these thoughts? I can come up with multiple reasons. One reason you're having them is you don't want them. As soon as you say don't think a thought, that's it, game over. The
Done.
other reason you're having
Mm-hmm.
them is you want to know what they mean. As soon as I want to know what any thought means, whether it's a violent thought, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
why can I get that picture out of my mind, whatever it is, if I want to know the meaning, that's it. OCD, so it's like, yes, you have violent thoughts, and we can have upsetting violent thoughts that are upsetting to us. It's when we want to, it's normal if you hold a newborn baby to think about killing it. Because everybody says, oh my God, look how cute and helpless it is, which is basically like saying, wow, I have this kid's life in my hands. People without OCD, they either forget they had the thought because it goes through quickly, or they go like, whoa, weird thought, and they go on. And if I have OCD, like, why would I think about hurting this baby and dropping it? Does that mean I really want to hurt it? Man, I would never hurt a baby. Honestly, I wouldn't hurt a baby. It's really horrible, but I had the thought. Maybe I really would hurt the baby. And then it goes on and on. And of course, then if I have to stop thinking it, then I'm in trouble. So, our goal would be to have you get used to thinking them and being as bad as the rest of us. If you're avoiding, like you won't watch TV shows, you won't watch the news, you can't see the color red and all these things, you're making your life small and that won't work.
Yeah. If you're at the conference, John and I might push you down the escalator. You don't know. It could happen. We might push each other down the escalator and knock ourselves into you.
We'll see who gets there first.
Yeah. We'll be racing for escalators.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to push him. No, I'm going to push him. Yeah. Yeah. You'll like this one, John. I'm gonna let you take this. What if the thought is too real and you can't do ERP? You can't do the exposure. I knew you would like that one. It's like a softball to you. So
I have no idea what it means when he says, "Is the thoughts too real?"
I don't know either. Yep.
So I mean, if you're saying to me, yeah, I have no doubt I want to stab my sister. Like it would be the best thing in the world to gut her and make a teepee out of her skin. And you're sure of that. Well, okay, that might be an area to not do it. But so I'm not sure, if you're saying.
Oh, wait, Chris says it's contamination, touching the trash can.
Oh, well, no offense, Chris. You're telling me that it's terrifying. You are saying you can't do it. And I have this belief that if I had a gun and named it at somebody you loved and said, touch the cash can or I'm shooting, I feel like you would touch it. I feel like if I had that same gun and said, hold your breath for 10 minutes or I'm shooting this person you love, I have a feeling they're dead. So I believe that you can hold your breath for 10 minutes. You might surprise me. So what you're really saying is, you're saying, I feel like I can't touch it. I feel like I'll be so anxious that I can't stand it.
Chris
can
says
you
yes.
actually do it?
Chris says I would touch the trash can then if you were holding a gun to.
That's right. And so that means you can do it. You're just saying
can do it.
You're really anxious. Now, if you were actually in therapy, I would probably start with something easier than the trash can. I would be saying, yeah, we're getting to the trash can sooner or later. So I might do therapy slower. Generally, when I do therapy, I never want the person just to do one hard thing like touch a trash can with their hands. That's a terrible exposure. I want to do an exposure where, even though it's a little bit challenging, the person will basically contaminate their house. So imagine we have 10 levels of exposure. I want nothing in your house to be zero. I want everything brought up to level 1, no safe places. Yep. So I'm much more interested in doing that easy exposure and covering everything than doing a level 7 where your hand's dirty and you're walking around all day holding it up there thinking about doing that. So eventually we'd get your house to that point. But so it's more important to make it a total exposure.
I love when people tell me they can't handle being in a house that has any kind of dirt or germs in it, but they have a cat, which means they have an animal that walks through its own urine and feces and then walks around the entire house, spreading all of it on their feet. And people are shocked when I say something like that. But I use it as the example. You've lived in it for a very long time. You just never thought about it. So look at that. You're already much braver than you gave yourself credit for.
Yes. And somebody wrote beneath, I can't touch things. They talk about the imperfection of surfaces and they really don't want things to be imperfect, while they simultaneously admit that nothing can be 100%. And so the goal really is to have you live through the anxiety of learning to live in a world that will never be perfect. And, curling into a ball and crying, you are living in a fantasy world. And you're aware of it. You are trying to do the impossible. Absolutely. So the goal is living in that impossible world and deciding that that is your goal. I'm not sure that you've decided that you want to learn to live with imperfect surfaces and everything, to have structural imperfections, because you don't have a choice. Right. So and you say you have to maintain a quantum structure. No, you don't. You try to.
You don't.
You feel you make all these attempts. You fail, and so yes, if your goal is to try to solve your problems by letting OCD rule you, you're hopeless.
Right. There will
And,
never
and,
be
and
satisfaction.
if your goal is to live within perfection, you're going to have a very scary treatment, but there's hope.
John, as always, this hour flies by as the
Holy
two of
cow, you're
us
right.
just yap away on all of these things. John, any final words for our friends out there in the
Well,
wide
I've
webverse?
decided that I'm going to go with the risk of turning my back on you at the conference, mainly because I think if you're going to push me down the stairs, you're not going to do it when anybody's looking.
Probably, yeah.
I'm banking on that.
I prefer no witnesses. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as long as
And
I'm not alone.
I'll see what I can sneak through TSA to get out to the San Francisco so that I can have some blunt objects to
Remind me
bludgeon you
next
with.
time to tell you about my TSA experience trying to bring 20 knives onto an airplane.
Oh, that had to be fascinating. Yes.
That was
I
fun.
will
And it was
absolutely
to the
love to hear about
conference.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Once again, everyone, thanks for joining us. This has been your No CD weekly webinar. John is with us once a month. Thank you, John, as always. We'll be back again next Wednesday. And if you're looking for therapy for OCD across the US, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, check us out at nocd.com for an online platform for the treatment of OCD and related disorders. We'll see you all again in a week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Take care, all.